Mr. Speaker, in 1987, the tax-loving NDP created a payroll tax, which, like a head tax, charges a fee to businesses based on the number of employees and the size of their employees' earnings. This tax on employment has had a harmful impact on business and employment growth in Manitoba.
Hit 'em where it hurts,
and as
Senator.
a result, many companies look to the cost-effectiveness of moving employees and operations outside of our province. Why does the NDP continue to have a payroll tax which drives business and employment away from Manitoba?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the health and education levy is worth $471 million. The Liberals proposed to eliminate it, Mr. Speaker. That's $471 million of cuts to health and education, Mr. Speaker. That's the largest single promise that the Liberal Party of Manitoba has made, Mr. Speaker. A foolish province. That will give tax breaks to the wealthiest banks in Manitoba, Mr. Speaker. The banks in Canada last year, their profits, $35 billion. By the way, the payroll tax is deductible against your federal corporate taxes, Mr. Speaker. It's a misguided policy, will not do anything to create jobs in Manitoba, will cut education, will cut health care, will mean less people get education and training, will mean less people get access to timely health care in the community, Mr. Speaker, less home care. It's a foolish policy. I ask the member from River Heights to reverse it with his leader today, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, a considerable proportion of the payroll tax is paid by organizations like hospitals and schools. Maybe that's why it's called a levy on education and health. These organizations receive money from the provincial government for their operations. In taxing such organizations, the government is artificially incurring extra costs and artificially inflating its revenue and expenses by moving money from one pot to another and back again.
Recycling.
Liberals will end this bureaucratic paper chase of over $100 million on a circuitous route that doesn't achieve any useful purpose. Why have the NDP failed in more than 16 years to remove this in-and-out scheme?
Mr. Speaker, $471 million cut out of health and education is not what this province needs right now, Mr. Speaker. That would be folly. That would be foolishness. That would mean less teachers in the classroom. That would mean less nurses at the bedside. That would mean less doctors in the community. That would mean less quick care clinics. That would mean less support for people that need to have access to health care. That would mean less investments in early childhood development, Mr. Speaker. All of those things will take Manitoba backwards. Mr. Speaker, the health and education levy would mostly benefit the big banks and the big corporations. Why is that his priority? Why is that the priority of the Liberal Party when we know people need the training to enter the labor force where we have one of the lower unemployment rates in the country, where we have one of the better job creation records in the country? Why would he want to cut supports away from young people, senior citizens in Manitoba, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, the Premier is dedicated to opposing the growth of business and opposing the growth of government revenue by placing an onerous tax on this growth. The Premier should recognize that all businesses contribute to our economy by employing Manitobans, by providing services to Manitobans, and by purchasing goods and services from each other, and thus helping the whole economy to develop and to grow.
Good point.
Why is the Premier not following the Manitoba Liberal Party lead and supporting all businesses in our province?
We, in fact, are supporting all businesses. Small business taxation rate in Manitoba under the leader of the opposition, the Conservatives, 9%. What is it now in Manitoba, Mr. Speaker? 0%. Corporate tax rates under the Conservatives when they were in office, Mr. Speaker, 17%. What is it now? 12%. Capital tax on businesses of all sizes in Manitoba, eliminated. The payroll tax will cut jobs from schools. It will take away opportunities for young people to get an education. It will take nurses away from the bedside. It will take doctors out of our communities and nurse practitioners out of our quick care clinics, Mr. Speaker, and reduce the ability to provide free cancer care drugs to all Manitobans. That is a foolish policy. That is a misguided policy. That is a policy that will make all Manitobans worse off, and only the big banks and corporations will be better off. Shame on the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Speaker.